Okay, so two things I want to talk about tonight. One is a blog post I did on denial, just kind of to expand on that a little bit. And the other thing would be to lay out what and where you can find the podcast, the blog, and The Wrong Armor, the audio fiction that's coming up here pretty soon. But first, I wanted to point this out. As a person who is a recovering alcoholic and someone who deals with anxiety issues and always have, which is one of the reasons I self-medicated, I've gotten very used to white noise in a set of earphones when I try to go to sleep. And there's, your usual waterfalls and ceiling fans and air conditioners and babbling brooks and so forth. But there's one that I just can't fathom anybody wanting to hear when they're trying to go to sleep, and it's this. Now, who, with anxiety issues, wants to hear a heartbeat in their ears to go to sleep? Because generally a person with anxiety feels and hears their heartbeat all the time, especially in their ears. So that's just a little creepy food for thought. Welcome to episode 2 of the AudioRising podcast from AudioRising.com. Okay, so my blog post that I put up yesterday, I believe it was, maybe the day before. It was on denial and some of the pitfalls of coming out of denial. And for this is one reason why I need a baseline in my life to go off of. It's kind of like based on our life experiences, we can either get into a place where we automatically trust everyone or we trust absolutely no one. And that's a dangerous place to be. Most of our lives are lived in that gray area between this person I'll trust because they've earned it, that person I won't trust because they haven't. And for the most part, it ends up being kind of a trial and error thing that we do through life. And we're going to get hurt, we're going to get burned, and we're going to be pleasantly surprised sometimes. One of the things that you run into when you come from a alcoholic / enabling addict codependent upbringing is that you don't know who to trust. And the rules change all the time. And you never know what circumstances you're going to walk into from one day to the next when you come home from school or when you get up in the morning or when the weekend rolls around or whatever. There's a lot of disappointments, there's a lot of misconceptions, and pretty soon we withdraw into ourselves a little bit. And so as I've gotten into recovery and I've started to look at where I came from, I had to do it objectively. And that's difficult to do when you're dealing with family of origin issues. Okay, this is where I came from. This is the people that were in my immediate family. I had a mom and a dad. The details don't matter, and quite honestly, most of it's not my story to tell. But suffice it to say, I was in a home that most of my life I longed for a divorce to happen, and it never did. And I'm sure I'm not alone in that, but I can say that now at 49. I couldn't say it at 15 or 16. That was just weird because you get sick and tired of seeing people taken advantage of and so on and so forth. What can happen, at least what happened to me, is you end up trusting one parent completely and distrusting the other one completely. And that's not healthy because even the addicted person is not wrong all the time. In fact, I've told guys that I've sponsored before, you couldn't possibly be wrong as often as your spouse or significant other says you are. It's not possible. Even a blind squirrel, you know what I mean? So that's where those trust barriers kind of end up being a little skewed. If you're coming from a similar background to me, I can tell you that parent that you trust implicitly is not always right. And when you get mad at them, many times that anger is justified from a human standpoint because you don't want to be mad at them. You think they always have your best interests at heart, and the honest reality is they may not. There's a lot of selfishness on both sides. in a one-addict family, I'll call it. But what I kind of alluded to in the denial blog was it's real easy to either never blame your family of origin or to blame them for literally everything that ever went wrong in your life and continues to go wrong in your life. Neither one of those are true. We have a responsibility to ourselves. And the reason I chose the Bible and the reason I look at it, and I believe many people look at it as the ultimate authority, simply because no person is perfect. And you can't trust 100% of anything that comes out of a person's mouth, because we're all fallible, we're all human, and we all make mistakes. The Bible calls that a sinner, okay? Sin is nothing more than doing something opposed to the way God designed it. And I do it literally every day. I do something opposed to God's design, and so does everyone else. So the basis of what you learn in Christianity, what you learn, I prefer the term follower of Jesus, because Christians got way too much stigma attached to it, speaking of stigma. But we have to have a solid foundation to stand on. And quite honestly, many of us with alcohol, drug problems, gambling problems, sex addiction, you name it, we don't have those fundamental, rock-solid foundations to stand on, which is part of what puts us in the position we're in now. At the same time, the Bible teaches grace, which means that we have to learn to be okay with the fact that our family of origin, along with everyone else in the world, was not perfect, and they were fallible, and they didn't get it right all the time, and that's regardless of which period you're talking. So the bottom line for me becomes a situation where I have to take responsibility for my own actions. This is something you will learn in the 12 steps. It's something that you will learn in the 8 principles and 12 steps of Celebrate Recovery. It's something that you'll learn in a bunch of different rehab centers. It's basically a fundamental of life. You'll run into it at work. If you look hard enough, it's there. You can't blame everyone else in the world for what's going wrong in your life. One thing I'm fond of saying is that, you ask people, well, what's your church background? Oh, I was raised blah, blah. I was raised Catholic. I was raised Baptist. I was raised Hindu or Mormon or whatever the case may be. Here's a cold, hard reality. That's somebody else's faith. That's not yours. The great thing about mankind and the great thing about a healthy mind that is able to make these decisions is that you get to choose. It's called free will. And that doesn't change with our personal decisions, and that doesn't change into and including all the way up to biblical theology. Any Bible scholar, any pastor, anybody who looks at it will tell you that we have free will, and that's a gift. So when it comes to denial, my big thing is I have to constantly stand in the breach between blaming myself, which is not all true, and blaming everyone else, which is not all true. I always say you put a human in a room by himself and eventually he'll get in an argument. So we're not going to agree on everything. As I've said before, this is just my point of view. So be careful that we don't become victims by looking at it as though someone else has caused all of our problems. At the same time, people who deal with addiction or people that deal with mental health issues, they also have got to get away from looking at themselves in the mirror and saying, I'm useless, I'm worthless, I'm flawed, I'm defective somehow. All that stuff needs to go away. The balance is what I have to stand in. And that falls into another biblical command that we're given, which is to take each thought captive. And that means simply to think about what we're actually thinking about. That becomes difficult when you can't drive, because you go into an absolute panic anytime you get over 25, 30 mile an hour. You can't go to movie theaters. You can't go to the mall. You can't get on a plane. You can't. It's very difficult to not see yourself as a mess. But quite honestly, there are millions of people out there with all kinds of phobias that even a person with anxiety issues would go, wow, that's kind of weird. You're really afraid of small dogs? But it's true. You're not that different from everyone else. You're really not. So anyway, that's just to expand on the thoughts I had when it comes to being in denial. that may not sound like denial, but kind of chew on that for a minute, think about it. A lot of times we'll say, my parents were fine, my family was fine, I'm just an F up, you know? That can be denial. That can be not seeing people as they really are, as was the case for me and my family of origin. You try so hard not to blame someone else that you sometimes don't see, well, wait a minute, that was a bad decision on their part. Doesn't mean you can fix it, doesn't mean you can change it, but it does mean you can acknowledge it, and you can acknowledge it from a safe place. I'm going to go into that safe place and a couple of analogies I like to use next time around. But moving on, right now I have 3 online activities going on, all of which are available by checking out my Twitter feed. What you'll find is the blog, which is AudioRising.com, and I might be moving that pretty soon because it's not technically working the way I want it to. But the second thing is the AudioRising podcast, kind of a companion to the written blog. And then what's going to be coming out here pretty soon is my audio fiction work called The Wrong Armor. And all of that's going to be available from AudioRising.com. Here's the thing. It's all free. The Wrong Armor and possibly these podcasts are going to be migrating over to Libsyn pretty soon, which means probably iTunes as well, for you people out there that insist on having an iPhone. Love them or hate them. But anyway, what I want to try and do is condense this as much as I can and kind of make the website home court for all this. If not, Facebook, maybe. So anyway, for those of you who pray, keep praying for me, or start praying for me, because I'm launching. I'm not waiting around for perfection. I mean, this is an exercise in recovery for me, both OCD, anxiety, and also my ongoing 12-step work and my ongoing recovery from alcohol abuse. So that's it. If you go to my Twitter feed, which is WesA1966 on Twitter, or if you go to AudioRising.com, you'll find the written blog, and then you'll find links to each one of these podcasts, and pretty soon also to The Wrong Armor, which will probably be easier to find than the podcast. Well, I've had some trouble with the podcast feed.
Stand by to receive our transmission.
Now, for people you should be following, I mentioned this last week, at The Worry Games on Twitter, and I just saw today that you will find it on Flipboard as well, which is really cool, even though I have no clue what that is. It's yet another platform. So if you're on Flipboard, go over there. You can go to theworrygames.com. I'm telling you, the content in there will make you realize in much more articulate terms than I have just how normal you are, just how common all of the issues that you have are as someone who's dealing with anxiety. And I would guess, I hate to speak for other people, but I would guess if you're dealing with bipolar issues, if you're dealing with depression, you're going to see a lot of yourself in this, in her content. And so go there. One of my biggest pet peeves is pronouncing people's names wrong, and I hate it when I do that. So I will avoid someone's name rather than take a chance on getting it wrong, but I don't have a choice in this case. I want you to go to Hillary Jacobs Hindell. Okay, so on Twitter she is Hillary J Hindell, Hendel. Website is HillaryJacobsHindell.com. I'm going to say this to the guys especially. You think you don't know how to deal with emotions, or you have a hard time processing emotions, this site is where you need to go. I've read a lot of her stuff. I even asked her permission if I could give her a shout out this week. She's an author, she's a psychotherapist, and she's one of these people that my heart just kind of lifts every time I read something of hers, because it's always, the feeling I always get is, you are okay, and here's why. Here's the science to back it up. Okay, this is natural for you to feel X in this situation, or Y in this situation. You got to check her out. I mean, she's an absolute, I will go ahead and use the non-scientific term, blessing to me right now. There's going to be more more people I'm going to be shouting out to and giving my 2 cents verbally, vocally, because I'm finding a whole world of fantastic content, as I said in episode 1. Give these places a shot. You're going to, well, I'll just say it, you're going to be blessed by it. So check it out, and we'll see you next time.
Opening music by Petra. The song Jekyll and Hyde from the album Jekyll and Hyde. Sound effects by freesounds.org. Background music by Kevin MacLeod at incompetech.com. Ending music by Terry Chisholm and Walking with Kings. This is a production of AudioRising.com 2016.